The farming life sim genre has come a long way since the original Harvest Moon on the Super Nintendo. What was once a niche genre has exploded with games like Stardew Valley selling millions of copies. As someone that's dumped thousands of hours into these kinds of games, I feel well prepared to deliver this review of Story of Seasons: Pioneers of Olivetown. While this entry adds tons of features new to the series, is it worth your time or simply a failed experiment? Let's dig in and find out. Oh, and if you love JRPGs and life sims like Story of Seasons, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming videos. The setup for Pioneers of Olivetown will feel very familiar for those that have played a farming life sim game before. Your grandfather has passed away and has left you his farm. You decide to leave the hustle and bustle of city life behind and move to the quaint Olivetown. While you do start with a plot of land that needs some work, you don't even have a house. You begin the game living in a tent until you can gather enough materials to build a house. If this reminds you of Animal Crossing New Horizons, keep watching because this won't be the first time I'll be mentioning that game. The other key component to Olivetown's story is improving the town itself. Every so often, the mayor will come to your house asking for supplies to improve the town in some way. This could be for something like improving the walkways or opening a new shop. The ultimate goal of all these improvements is to turn Olivetown into a popular tourist destination. From a gameplay perspective, most of these improvements feel superficial with no real changes. However, there are some shops that open up that will allow you to change your appearance and sell you new clothes. From a storytelling perspective, it was a nice hook that kept me wanting to see what happened next. Farming life sims don't always have super deep stories, so it was great to have this added storyline. What I also liked about this was how the whole town felt like they were trying to contribute in their own ways. For example, Raina, who works at the museum, wants to create interesting exhibits that will attract tourists. Admittedly, most of the dialogue in Pioneers of Olivetown is fairly bland, but whenever it came back to improving the town, it felt more cohesive and compelling. Gameplay in Olivetown is what you might expect. You'll be tending to your farm by growing crops and raising animals. You'll also be spending plenty of time mining, chopping wood, and fishing. What makes every element of gameplay addicting in Olivetown is its leveling system. No matter what you're doing, you'll be slowly leveling up a skill. As you level up a skill, new crafting or cooking recipes will unlock and particular skills will become much more efficient. For example, as you level up your mining skill, you'll be unlocking new recipes that require ore, and mining won't drain your energy nearly as much. If you're able to level certain skills to level 9, secret areas will unlock, but don't worry, I wouldn't dare spoil those here. Something I found neat in Olivetown was how you unlock buildings for your animals and new areas to explore. Typically, you just need to save up enough materials and the local carpenter will build you one. While that's still true to a certain extent, the buildings actually already exist on your farm, they're just really run down. Once you fix them up, there's typically a wild animal nearby that you can tame and add to that building. One thing Olivetown seems to be trying to push is customization, and that actually includes the buildings themselves. If you're not happy with where they are or just want a more efficient setup, you can pick up the buildings and move them wherever you'd like. Again, just like Animal Crossing. The only annoying thing is that every time you move a building, you have to rename it and manually re-add every animal. I'm guessing they did this in case you had multiple coops or barns, but I never did during my playthrough, so this just felt like an unnecessary annoyance. As you continue exploring your farm, you'll eventually find broken bridges that lead to new areas. Once repaired, each new area typically has a new farm building, a mine with better ore, new types of trees, and much more. I have to say, I really like this aspect. Knowing you needed to save materials to unlock new areas gave Olivetown a great feeling of progression. There was always something to work towards, with rewards waiting for you on the other side. One aspect of farming I'm not wild about are these maker machines. Early on, they don't seem like a big deal and you only have a few, but by the time I beat the game, my farm looked like this. They will absolutely litter your farm and become an eyesore. I don't necessarily mind the concept of them, however, the way they're implemented could have been way better. The makers have two main problems. One is that there are just way too many types. I mean, do gems and ores really need two different kinds of makers? The second problem is that you can only load one ingredient in at a time. Throughout your day, you'll constantly be swapping out ingredients and trying to manage your bag space even when it's been fully upgraded. Overall, the makers just feel inelegant. Although the development team has promised changes to the makers, so we'll have to wait and see. One new feature that was very obviously borrowed from Animal Crossing is the museum. Here you can donate treasures, fish, and photos to the museum to help flesh it out. Trying to collect everything can be a fun challenge, but the museum itself is just so lame. Look how sad this aquarium is. The fish aren't even moving. They're just JPEGs with a water filter over the top. In Animal Crossing, the aquarium is so fun to fill up. Walking around the different exhibits and seeing the fish swim together is so cool. This just isn't. The same goes for the treasure room in Olivetown. It feels so low effort. I can appreciate that the developers were trying to do something different here, but unless they're willing to put in a little more effort into this feature, I wouldn't even bother with it for future games. Let's talk about interacting with characters because this feels equally as shallow. Each day you can talk to a character to raise your heart level with them and also give them one gift per day. Outside of getting a girl to like me just to see what happened, I just didn't care. Everyone is always saying the exact same thing. If it's within 3 days of a festival, that's all anyone wants to talk about. Seriously, everyone in town. It's like no one else has anything going on in their life besides the festivals, and that's just sad. Even when I got Raina to max heart level, she really doesn't talk to me any differently. Even in 2020's Friends of Mineral Town, I felt like characters talk to you differently the more you raise your heart level with them. In all of town, it was just boring. Once you've raised your heart level with a character up enough, unique cutscenes will play out. Typically, these would help flesh out their personality or give you a reason to like them more, but in all of town, they're just scenes that happen. At the beginning of the game, I was pursuing Lynn, and in one of her cutscenes, I was trying to find her in the forest, and she was just sleeping there. And then it was over. What was I supposed to learn about her? That she's narcoleptic? I'm not gonna lie, this was probably my most disappointing aspect of Pioneers of Olive Town. Sure, farming is a big part of these games, but I really enjoy the social aspect of them. Getting to know the townsfolk should be fun, not a chore. The presentation in Pioneers of Olive Town also leaves a lot to be desired. The art style is fine, I guess. It's not really stylized in any neat way, nor does it look particularly bad. I would say it's inoffensive. I'm a little disappointed that they removed character portraits for the dialogue boxes. In Friends of Mineral Town, these really gave characters added depth and they looked great. And honestly, the character art in the menus of Olive Town looked great too, so I'm not sure why the development team decided to not have these for dialogue. My biggest issue with Olive Town's presentation though is how it runs. Early on there isn't much on your farm and it runs fine. But once I got to winter and my farm was absolutely full, it just chugs. Really, anytime there's a lot on screen like with festivals, the frame rate takes a nosedive. There's also really bad pop-in and barely tolerable load times. The loading isn't as bad as it was before the recent patch, but it still feels like forever when you're running errands back and forth from your farm in the town. The music is totally forgettable. I listened to each season just to get a taste of what each track sounded like, but pretty quickly I turned on a podcast or other music. The game also doesn't have voice acting unless you count the occasional "wow!" So you're honestly not missing much if you play with the sound off. I wanted to love Pioneers of Olive Town. I really did. It seemed like it had a lot of cool ideas going on and was trying new things. Unfortunately, the game as a whole just didn't come together in a way I had hoped. Sure, the farming gameplay is great and there are so many activities to keep you busy, but when I was trying to think of a short description for this game, I kept coming back to wide but shallow. There are way too many competitors in the genre that are doing what Pioneers of Olive Town is attempting to do, just doing it way better. Unless you're the most die-hard fan of the series, I would honestly wait for a sale or for the upcoming Rune Factory 5. However, if you're looking for a great Story of Seasons game to play right now, be sure to check out my review for last year's Friends of Mineral Town. And if you want to stay up to date with more farming sim and JRPG reviews, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.